Rarely wrong, always right. Sam Mirejovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the show. Good to be here with you as always this beautiful Tuesday. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. At What's Right Sam on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am astounded, folks. Well, no, I'm not astounded. Robbie, actually, I'm not surprised at all. But if you take a look at this piece and reason, they tracked the minimum wage fast food hike in California that, by the way, Gavin Newsom, preparing his run for president, is running around the country touting as one of his great accomplishments, has literally cost California workers 18,000 fast food jobs. That's right. A law purported to help fast food workers in the state of California has done precisely the opposite. Now, here's the math. In case you're wondering, this is a paper that was put together by the NBER. This is the National Bureau of Economic Research. They found that while the law did, in fact, in California, this is the $20 minimum wage law, Assembly Bill 1228, that went into effect, was signed into law in 2023 and raised minimum wage to $20 per hour in the state of California on the 1st of April, 2024, that it did, in fact, increase the wages of California's food sector by 8%. Relative to the rest of the country. Now, the positive effects ended there. Fast food employment decreased in California by 2.64% from the time that the law was signed to September 2024. What was going on, by the way, in the rest of the country? Well, that's the important baseline. Apparently, fast food employment everywhere else in the U.S. increased by 0.1%. There was growth in this same time period. So when they did the math on this and figured it out, basically, California's fast food industry shrunk by 3.2% relative to fast food employment in the U.S. And by the way, if you take California, because there were a few other states that did similar things, of course, these were blue states doubling down on Democrat lunacy. If you take the states that didn't raise the minimum wage, those states were up by 3.5% compared to California. It is an economy killer, these minimum wage laws, and yet Democrats continue to double down on it. In fact, we've got a radical Democrat socialist running for mayor in New York. He has, I believe, national aspirations for office. This is a guy to watch. I've warned you about him. And so there's a greater question in all of this. As I stand back from it and look at the bird's eye view, I look at this and I go, isn't it unbelievable? When you look, and I do, being Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, I like to look at our neighbors to our immediate left and think about the many ways that the California promise went horribly wrong. A state that, and I'm speaking about California here, as a proud Nevadan, California has everything going for it. It has a beautiful coast. It has rivers. It has mountains. It has snow cap. It has weather that I would argue is more favorable to ours. It's got ports. It's got, look, everything on it ought to be, and it once was, the great promise of America. Yet, the Democratic Party, in a relatively short period of time, completely sunk the state. And they sunk it with people like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, the idiotic mayor of the city of Los Angeles. Now, what's astounding to me, if you look at where we are today, mid-2025, the Democrats are looking at this and going, oh, I know. Here's the answer to it. It's not bad enough that we destroyed places like California, New York City. There's another study in mismanagement. It's not enough that we destroyed them with people like Gavin Newsom and people like Karen Bass, Andrew Cuomo, Hochul, Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, all these clowns, de Blasio, the mayor of New York City before Adams, who was an outright pinko, but still a Democrat. It's not enough that we did this. We are going to double down on this failure. And instead of moderating our position as a party, we will go full socialist. This latest round of Democratic politicians who are openly calling themselves socialists are publicly attaching their name to, I would say, policy positions, right? And campaign promises that are equal to the things that my parents saw in the communist country that they were raised in and fled, would have been unthinkable some time ago. And yet it is becoming mainstream in the Democratic Party. And these people are winning. They're winning primaries. We've got the Somali pirate, whatever his name is, in Minneapolis. The mayor there, the guy who knelt and cried with his COVID mask on at George Floyd's gold coffin, himself ousted in favor for a guy who is out there as a radical socialist from Somalia. It's just, the whole thing is a complete and utter joke. So what happens with all of this? Where does it go from here? Because just when we think it can't get any worse, they continue to push the envelope. And one of the things I think in all of this is that for the last 9 years, starting with Trump's escalator ride down in Trump Tower, announcing in 2015 that he was running for president, we have been told that Trump is a radical. We've been told that Trump is a fascist, is a Nazi. The hyperbole about Trump has been off the chains. And we're all, I think you're very aware of this, because no doubt you've had somebody somewhere tell you a thing or two when you've worn a red MAGA hat in public or had a bumper sticker on your car, being the brave soul that you are. All right? You're aware. Now, ironically, the further they push to the crazy left, the more communist they go. I think the more defensively sane Trump's positions are. It would be unthinkable 15 years ago, hell, 10 years ago. And it was. Remember when Trump started talking about building the wall and Mexico paying for it and deporting people in 2015? And there was, people, even Republicans, were aghast. Flash forward 10 years, the conversation has moved to general acceptance and support even for mass deportations. Why? Because under Biden, the Democrats took it too far. We are witnessing a pendulum shift back. And the question you have to ask yourself is, why, at the very moment where the general consensus of the country is politically, based on the outcome of the election and recent polling results, that Trump's positions, his platform, is generally popular, more than half of the country supports it. Why, in this time now, the Democrats are doubling down on going even further to the left? And I think the answer is quite simple. I think the Democrats have, like any proper communist movement, have ousted from their midst any dissent, any logic, any moderation. It is a race to actual real extremism, and the party purity demands, right, adherence to the most radical of ideologies. And this is, by the way, how it works in every good communist revolution. You start with the first wave of communist revolutionaries, and they all are clamoring to be the most fervent, the most radical, the most demanding, most crazy, because anybody less than that gets killed. They end up in the meat grinder. They end up in the guillotine. They end up lined up against the wall, shot. And the thought that goes through their heads, right, in the moment before the bullet comes through is, why am I in the same position as the Romanovs? And the answer is simple. The revolution requires a constant feeding of bodies. And this is why, for example, and I'll get to it here in a minute, Rahm Emanuel sits down and he says a man is a woman, and a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and he immediately goes, and now I'm a dead man in the party for saying that. You can't even the Democrats have gotten to the point where they can't even publicly say that transgenderism is BS without risking ouster from the movement, cancellation by fellow Democrats. This is a race to the extreme. And will it be politically successful? Well, that remains to be seen. I kind of doubt it. Let's discuss. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam & Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
The demand for radical ideological purity within the Democratic Party for some time is a real thing. And folks, it's a race to the bottom, if you ask me. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. The What's Right show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam & Ash 702-820-1234 because you deserve what's right. Now, if you doubt what I'm saying, think about some of the Democrats that have been chased away, that have been cast out of the party. Think about the number of intellectuals, for example, Barry Weiss, Michael Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, all of them former Democrats, certainly Clinton Democrats, who it would be unthinkable 20 years ago that they would be essentially supporting Donald J. Trump. And why are they supporting Trump? Well, it's easy. I guess it's sort of easy to say that the Democratic Party got too far left for them. That's a huge part of it. But the other part of it is that if you go back 25 years, the Republican Party was actually far more extreme than it is now. And I say extreme because I remember my entire childhood, the Republican Party was beholden to a sort of a religious element, the Christian Coalition, and religious Republicans had enormous influence within the Republican Party, and it sort of permeated everything about the party, which doesn't exist as much anymore. Trump took essentially Democrat positions. Okay. Well, Trump's not a rabid guy on abortion. Trump believes in sort of a Solomonic, solution here, which is, based on time and et cetera. He's not a crazy radical on that front, which was always a litmus test in the past for Republicans. If you wanted to run as a Republican for president, Robbie, do you remember all this when we were younger? A Republican was to run for president. First question, what do you think about abortion? It's like, oh, with everything going on in the world and our debt and all the let's start with abortion. Number one issue. Okay. It doesn't mean that we Republicans don't have the Charlie Kirks out there who I respect and love, who care about the issue very much. And it's okay. We're a big tent party. It's just not a defining issue. America first is a defining issue. Our national sovereignty is a defining issue. Our existential survival as a country, yeah, of course, national security wise and culturally has become a defining issue. And the reason that these things have become bigger and more influential in our minds is because, of course, the Democrats, again, pushed and pushed so far. The beginning of the end of the Democratic Party, it's Barack Obama. And now that we find out that Barack Obama essentially went full Lavrenti Beria on Trump, we realize that, that the desperation to stop Trump, the Democrats were so driven to end him because they recognized that this would be a popular counter movement to theirs. And it could potentially arrest every bit of quote unquote progress that they were able to muster. If we talk about, purity, look at RFK. RFK was a Democrat. RFK spoke out with common sense about food and support for Trump. He spoke out against pumping our bodies full of chemicals and turning over basically our political system to big pharma. By the way, those positions would be more Democrat positions not that long ago. And what happened to RFK Jr.? Well, even his own family doesn't talk to him. You want to talk about the revolutionaries that eat their own? The Democrats do this. RFK Jr. has been drummed out of polite society, as the Democrats would call it. He can't go to any of his clubs that his family has been members of for the past 100 years. Forget it. He's on the outs. Brett Weinstein, right? By the way, imagine Christopher Hitchens today and Tulsi Gabbard, who's been in the news a wee little bit over the last 4 days, was herself, once upon a time, a Democrat. The party has chased out everyone mildly logical. And the cost is that now their vacancy has left the party in a state where you have radical socialists, communists running for office and winning. And maybe not nationally, but in certain blue areas, they are. It ought to shock you. And perhaps it doesn't. But the reason I talk about Mamdani and the reason I'm going to talk about this Somalian in Minneapolis is because, our eyes right now are very much on Gavin Newsom. We're looking at Newsom. Newsom will be running for president. There's no question about it. If all things remain equal as they are today, in 2027, Newsom will announce his candidacy for the Democratic nomination. It's, I will say, all but inevitable. And yet, Newsom is in a very precarious place. And listen very closely to what I'm going to say here. Internally, Newsom recognizes that he's a white man, that he's on the outs in terms of identity, okay, in his own party. Newsom also recognizes that to win the general, he can't be a lunatic. But to win the adoration and support of the grassroots of the Democratic Party in 2024. I mean, he's thinking today, right? 2025, but it's, 3.5 years out. In order to win the support of the grassroots of the Democratic Party, he really has to start talking in radical, lefty terms. This guy's going to be turned into an absolute ideological pretzel before he even declares himself in the race. It's going to be interesting to watch. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Back in a moment, folks. Don't go anywhere. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian. Happy Tuesday. Yes, indeed, I am. I'm back. We just had a short break. I felt like I was off the air for a minute. So anyway, sam@whatsrightshow.com is my email. @whatsrightsam on X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, the ideological purity yesterday on the Megyn Kelly show. Rahm Emanuel, who, is a very famous Democrat, political player, himself a former mayor of Chicago back when Democrats were semi-normal. By the way, in the moment, I know I did. We complained about Rahm Emanuel being a left-winger. Today, in a very short period of time, we went from Rahm Emanuel to Beetlejuice to Brandon Johnson. I mean, that's Chicago, a great American city that has been reduced to a laughingstock by a Democratic Party that is absolutely as left-wing as it can be. Short of confiscating property, short of violating the takings clause in the Constitution, Democrats in Chicago have run the city into the ground. This stuff is wild. And when you're a Democrat, the number one fear that you have is not conforming to the most radical elements within your party. And this was a little throwaway deal inside the longer interview with Megyn Kelly, but Rahm Emanuel gets to this talking about trans views. Now, we as Republicans understand a man is a man, woman's a woman, one can't become the other, etc. People sometimes think they're the other sex. Whatever, if they're adults, that's fine. Live your life and leave the kids alone. I mean, at least that's my ideology, okay? And I think it's based on common sense, which is why I call this program Common Sense Conservatism. Here's Rahm Emanuel, formerly, of the, this guy's an Obama administration guy, becomes mayor of Chicago, certainly was once considered left-wing, sounding almost MAGA.
I have a son and 2 daughters, and they are physically different. And that's why when it comes to sports...
Why did all the Democrats bail off of that point? A couple came out right after the election, and they said what you just said, and then they got browbeaten, and then they started to watch that.
The answer's in the question. I mean, that's not ever scared me. And, I used to say this to President Clinton and President Obama. Sound is not always fury. Sometimes it's just sound. And don't assume just because somebody's screaming at you, they represent more than their own voice.
Should we be putting men in female prisons? Men claiming they're women?
No.
And, all right, here's my last one for you. Can a man become a woman?
Can a man become a woman? No.
Thank you.
No.
That's so easy. Why don't more people in your party just say that?
Because I'm now going to go into a witness protection plan.
Some of the very Bolsheviks that went in and shot the Romanov family, the rulers of Imperial Russia, were later executed by firing squad. Just happened. The revolutionaries will always go after the less fervent revolutionaries. The revolution is always very hungry. And that's what we're witnessing now. Democrats are eating their own. What does he mean by he now has to go into the witness protection program? You think he's hiding from MAGA people? He's lost all his friends at BuzzFeed. Well, at the Wall Street Journal. Yeah. Yeah, his contacts at the Politico won't talk to him. No, Rahm Emanuel's not running for any office, and he's older guy, and he just doesn't care. The same way that, you'll get occasionally some sparks of logic from, James Carville. Although he's a nut, an absolute insane, crazy person, Carville has and did during the fiasco otherwise known as the Biden-Harris campaign against Trump in 24, first Biden, then Harris, was ranting about the idiocy inside the Democratic Party. People didn't really, a lot of people didn't listen to it. The Democrats have taken their failures and instead of pivoting toward a platform that would give them wins, are doubling down on a direction that will cause only future failure. I'll give you examples of California, right? I mean, this minimum wage stuff, it's not working. I shared with you the stats. They up in 2024, they up April 1st, also known as April Fools, the minimum wage for food workers, fast food workers, to $20 an hour. And if, just tuning in, I mentioned that this caused a net decrease of employment, about 18,000 jobs, and California's overall fast food labor force shrunk by 3.5% relative to states that did not have this type of minimum wage by fiat increase. Now, of course, you and I, being conservatives, we understand what this is all about. Number one, it's posturing. Number two, because sanctuary cities provide an endless source of under-the-table workforce, right? Under-the-table workforce that employers, many of them are able to quietly wink, wink, nod, nod, get away with this. And third, what does the state want? If you're a Democrat, if you're an elected Democrat, if you are a socialist, what do you want? You are happy when people leave the workforce. You are happy when people need food stamps, public support. The more people that are on the government's, teat, the better off you are because the more power you have. If you're somebody typically on welfare, are you more likely to vote for the Democrat who promises you more free stuff? Yes. And so what they're doing is, and it's really dastardly, but it's brought to you by the same people who opened the border and had no problem with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of kids disappearing just so they could have political power. That's the idea behind it. It is part of the Democrats' plan. And it's pretty obvious. And this stuff that they're doing now, when you look at Zohran Mamdani, who is running for mayor in New York, and he's promising state-run grocery stores or city-run grocery stores and bodegas and free this and free that. It is everything that Newsom has done on steroids. And I think every one of us agrees logically that you keep doing the stuff that isn't working and you do more of it, it's going to get worse, like by definition. Anyway, by the way, Newsom thinks that this minimum wage thing was great. In fact, what was this last Monday on the Sean Ryan show? I played some of these clips of Newsom, and he does a lot of this hand talking. The guy is such a creep. And he does his hand talking, and it's just so disturbing. But here he is talking about the minimum wage. He's boasting. He's like, this is the greatest thing we've ever done.
Come on. 2/3 of red states, $7.25. I provided $25 in the healthcare, highest in the country. $20 in fast food. I know people are pissed at that, but 2/3 of fast food workers are not teenagers anymore. Mm-hmm. They're moms, man. It's full-time jobs. And I was proud to give them that wage increase. And yeah, burgers a few cents more. I get it. but businesses can't thrive in a world that's failing.
What did he say? That, yeah, businesses can't thrive in a world that's failing. Is this why Gavin Newsom's California has the largest exodus of businesses fleeing the state? It's almost like he just says things because they sound good, right? That's a nice turn of phrase. And he doesn't realize that it's a cell phone. There's no one that I know of who's in business who says they're in California because it's the best place for them to do business. I know a lot of people who are in business in California say, listen, I'm here because I want to be here. I'm here because I'm not moving the kids. I hear this all the time from my friends that, I used to be my neighbors, et cetera. And when I lived out there, I still keep in touch with a few. The number one thing that I hear is I will move my business when my youngest graduates from high school. I just don't want to disrupt my family. And they kind of look at me like, I did that. I just pulled them all out of school and we moved in 2019, 2020. We just moved. And COVID was, a break that kind of gave that some cover, but I get it. But I do not hear from people, and I legitimately talk to enough California. Nobody says, boy, this is the best place to do business. You drive around Las Vegas, look at the companies, you think that UFC is in Nevada because this is the best place in the middle of the desert for UFC to be headquartered, because this is where the top honchos of UFC want to live, or because I guess there are UFC fights in Vegas. UFC is here in Las Vegas, in Nevada, because it is the closest low tax jurisdiction to Southern California. And on the plus side, I suppose one of the greatest things that we have going for us here in Nevada, particularly Southern Nevada, but you're seeing the same phenomenon occur up in Reno, that we are the closest low tax jurisdiction to LA County, to Southern California, Orange County, LA County. And by the way, up in Reno, closest low tax jurisdiction to the Bay Area. But all these people who destroyed California, coming to Nevada, coming to Texas, coming to Florida, bringing their crazy left-wing ideas with them, ready to destroy yet another state. That's part of the lunacy I will never understand. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840. Right back after this, folks. Don't change the channel. Greetings, friends. Welcome back. The What's Right show is on. Sad news came to us earlier today. Ozzy Osbourne, legendary rocker, passed away at 76. But by the way, one of the most famous and enduring memories of Ozzy Osbourne is the time that he bit a bat's head off on stage during a concert. I think as a kid, that was what everybody talked about. Oh my gosh, the guy bit a bat and lived to tell the tale. And this, by the way, Ozzy had, since then, every malady known to man. I mean, he had lung disease, he was a broken vertebrae, all this stuff medically wrong with him. But he survived COVID. And producer Robbie and I were talking about, we think that bat might have been the original COVID vax. So, legends never die. Ozzy Osbourne, rest in peace. Just kind of sad news, obviously, today. So, let's. I'll get to the Fed in a bit. All right. I know everybody's expecting me to make that announcement. I'll get to it in a bit. But listen, I've got to take this in order because I think we are witnessing the, speaking of deaths that are not too untimely, The Democratic Party absolutely writing its obituary right now, going through this, that I worry that Gavin Newsom has to pivot to the left to appease the radicals within his party, even with the help that he no doubt will get from the DNC, where he has made a tremendous amount of favors. And why this matters, of course, is, do we want to be governed by a party, and it's likely to happen at some point, gosh forbid, a party that has moved so radically to the left? Do we want a Democrat president, even if it is a so-called Democratic moderate, to be beholden to radical elements within the party, the Democratic Socialists, who are basically keen on destroying our free market economy, for one, want to confiscate wealth, want to open the borders, want to erase national sovereignty? You know, I do not envy Trump his job that he has before him, this administration. It's gargantuan. And it's not just about hashtag making arrests, although those are important. I see so many people clamoring, making arrests, make the arrest. I'm with you. I want all of these criminals rounded up and arrested from Obama on down. But we have radicals like this Omar Fateh. Fateh, I think is how he pronounces it, right, Robbie? Robbie's looking at me skeptically. I'm calling him the Somali pirate. But anyway, he's now becoming the mayor, or will be likely the mayor of Minneapolis. Jacob Frey was defeated there. He was the incumbent. This is for the Democratic nomination. Everybody in the city is a Democrat. This is the hometown of Tampon Tim, so you can kind of get the idea. Ground zero for, of course, George Floyd. So the malady that afflicted the entire country in the summer of 2020 spread from Minneapolis. If you've never been to Minneapolis, it's okay. But Minneapolis has, in some way, shape, or form, affected your life in the last 5 years. That's all I'm saying. It's easy to say, oh, that crazy stuff is happening in San Francisco. Oh, yeah, that's where they let homeless people poo on the street, right? Oh, LA, I live in Nevada. I'm immune for it. You're not immune from it. I'm not immune from it. The crazy, whacked out criminals that aren't getting taken in, arrested, punished, imprisoned, etc., are making their way to Nevada. And the Democrats, when they're done messing up their state, come here to Nevada and then vote the same way they did where they came from. The Democratic cancer does what cancer does. It spreads. And the analogy actually is very good, I think, because like cancer cells, they are devouring. They just eat everything and destroy everything, healthy tissue in their wake. It's not just the idea of the politics. It's the destruction that the politics leaves behind. So, we talk about, and the number one, Robbie, and I got to get to this at the top of the hour, the number one most idiotic thing that Republicans can do is try to forge common ground with us. God, I'm holding my head. Those of you watching the Sam Cam, here is me looking exasperated. This is my exasperated face. You really think right now the answer, okay, Trump wins. Everybody told us it was impossible. Hell, they did everything, including trying to kill him to prevent Trump from getting into office. He does it. He gets into office. He surrounds himself with, I would say, mostly A players. Now the administration hits the ground. Tom Homan is out there rounding up illegals, going in. Trent Arregua getting rounded up, sent over to CCOT in El Salvador. Boom, boom, boom. All this stuff happening. Wins in the Supreme Court. And what do Republicans do? There are actually Republicans out there now who are going, you know what? Okay, now it's time to moderate. Republicans never miss a chance to step on their own wieners. It's like a thing that we do. And I think Republicans love being the opposition party. I have this theory. it's almost this ingrained beta DNA that we Republicans have. And indulge me in this for a minute. Republicans love to grandstand and talk big against Democrats. But when it comes time to governing, when it comes time to being in office, the best they do is maintain the status quo. And then when the Democrats get back into office, come in and say, well, all right, so we're elected now. We've got Congress, we've got the presidency. They run roughshod over the whole system, norms, they throw them out the window, law, constitution, anything. They literally rip it all up. They do what the Obama team did. They do what Biden did. And we Republicans have to do the same. And I've got this idiot here, this Congress, and it's got a bunch of people in Congress that are playing into Democrat hands, plain and simple. I'm going to get to this next. Really, folks, infuriating. Now is the time to govern. Now is the time to clean it up. Now is the time to show that our way is the best way. Give it time. Don't just fold immediately at the slightest mention of, a sign of blowback. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, the What's Right Show is brought to you by Sam & Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. Hi, welcome to the What's Right Show, your place for common sense conservatism, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. here on News Talk 840 KXNT. Happy Tuesday, folks. Lots going on out there, and I'm going to keep on top of all of it. But I also I've got to tell you that this is just maddening here. I mentioned this the other day, and I want to get back to it again because there is a representative out of Florida. Her name is Maria Salazar, and she has proposed a dignity bill for immigrants, basically an amnesty. That's what it is. It's amnesty for immigrants that have been here over 5 years, have contributed, blah, 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 all the usual tripe that people use out there to legitimize folks that have broken the law and have come to this country without permission. Now, here, I don't want to put any words in her mouth. I want to do this very carefully because, this is the interview that she gave on Thursday. This is what first caught my attention. And she does mention that these folks broke the law, but they are, quote unquote, contributing to the economy. So, we ought to have some compassion. Listen.
And I think that's a fantastic question. They did break the law. They are illegals or undocumented, but they have been here for more than 5 years, contributing to the economy. Those people, someone gave them a job, and they are needed because we need hands in order to continue being the #1 economy in the world. So why don't we do something Solomonic? And let's break the baby into two. No path to citizenship in my law, no amnesty, no path ever. Just
okay. So they're going to, no path to amnesty, but no path to citizenship, but we give them amnesty. They can stay. I mean, first off, Robbie, I don't understand. Okay, if somebody is staying in the country, don't somehow eventually they're going to have a path to citizenship. I mean, isn't that implied? Don't we want people who are in the country to ultimately become citizens? We do not want to be a nation of folks that are not invested. So I don't know. I don't understand. Now, of course, there's a huge uproar. By the way, this isn't one lone person. There's a handful of Republicans that are pushing this right now. And Monday at a local 10 News interview down there in Florida, she quickly says, well, somebody will give them a path to citizenship in the future.
We give them dignity. At some point in the future, another legislator will write another law to give them path to citizenship. Right now, what we need to do is to buy peace for these people, allow them to stay, to continue working, because they are needed. You see, it's what I'm trying to do is to bring some common sense, which is the least common of all senses, to this conversation. The economy needs them. They do not have a criminal record. They have not gone into trouble. They have been here for a long time. They have roots in the country. Let them stay. Don't give them any type of federal programs. And allow them to pay taxes, help the Social Security Fund, and let them stay and contribute with the economy with no criminal record. What is wrong with that? We need them.
Yeah, what is wrong with that? She almost sounds, minus the expletives, like Hunter Biden in that interview from just the other day. Now, what is wrong with that is quite simple. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. You don't have to be Elon Musk to connect the dots that her nicety, and let's take this congresswoman, this Republican congresswoman, and her merry band of amnesty-toting Republicans. At their word. They just want dignity. They just want fairness. They just want niceness. They just want to do the right thing. Okay, let's just assume that that's what it is. Do they not realize that their kindness, their compassion will be taken advantage of by a Democrat lying in wait who is quick and will be quick to turn these Republicans into a wealth of bodies for purposes of electoral advantage? Some Democrats, fortunately, are so stupid that they say the quiet part out loud. And that's what made this next clip so astounding. Yvette Clarke, Democrat, New York, attended a Zoom meeting and literally admits, you got to wait for it at the end of the clip, literally admits that we need more illegals to help Democrats with redistricting.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district, but just for redistricting purposes. And those members could clearly fit here.
They could fit them all into my district. Load up my district. I want to fatten my district up with warm bodies. Why? Because the more people in my district, the more power I have, the more likely I am to keep my seat. And by the way, it doesn't matter who votes. If I've got, and I'm just going to use some simple math here to understand how this works, if I've got 10 Democrats in my district, and I've got 7 Republicans, and I add 20 or 30, non-voting illegals into my district. I don't know. I mean, if they get Social Security numbers like they did with Joe Biden, maybe they can vote. And of course, they're going to reliably vote Democrat because they've been given all these freebies by the Democrats. They know who butters their bread, if they even vote themselves. But that district swells and potentially splits in two, forming 2 Democrat voting districts. And now the Democrats have what? Instead of 1 Democratic representative from a particular area, they have 2. And because Congress does not keep growing, that district was taken away from some other area, probably a Republican one. So what is a gain for the Democrats of 1 seat, a loss for the Republicans of another, is a net +2 every vote in Congress. I don't know how else to spell it out for you, but this is the name of the game. And any Republican that goes, oh, but amnesty, and oh, we got to be compassionate, and like, oh my God, these people are like wonderful, and like, are delusional. Or as the kids say now, delulu. They're nuts, and they're defeatist. I always get this wrong, Robbie, so prepare yourself. Republicans never miss an opportunity to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. I did it right this time. I get a little mixed up. It's my dyslexia. But Robbie's in there laughing and waving his arms. Okay. I'm glad somebody's proud of me today. Yeah. Well, but that's it. We're literally winning. We are out there decimating. Why do you think there's the long face on every Democrat, from Karen Bass to Gavin Newsom to Kathy Hochul in New York? Why are they so depressed? They see that Republicans under Trump are dismantling their entire motor voter, get more power in Washington scheme. And that's it. And by the way, this congressman from New York ought to be concerned, because Tom Homan has said he's literally going to pump New York full of officers. They will go in, they will pump them full, and don't try to intimidate us by shooting our agents like they did the other day in New York. That will not be tolerated. We are going to double down on our efforts. And remember, thanks to the big, beautiful bill, the funding for ICE is through the roof.
Well, Governor Hochul, she supported the Bail Reform Act. This is why these illegal aliens, walked out of a NYPD precinct. They didn't even get to Rikers Island. So it starts with bail reform. Then the sanctuary city, starts with de Blasio and the city council. I put a lot of blame on the city council, because we had an agreement to put ICE back into Rikers Island.
Yeah. So enforcement isn't going to stop. It's not going to slow down. You don't hear Tom Homan and Trump going, oh, gosh, it's true. There's some people here who've kind of been good people, so we got to figure something out. Remember, the greatest thing, we got caught up a little bit in Epstein, and it's the Trump administration's fault, okay? I lay the fault for that squarely with Pam Bondi. But now that we're, moving to other stuff, it keeps coming back to Republicans must avoid self-sabotage. Number one, with immigration, if Trump were to declare or ally himself with any kind of amnesty plan, the MAGA movement is over. Because fundamental to America first is national sovereignty. Number one for national sovereignty is a safe and secure border. And number one for a safe and secure border is not just barricades along the border and barbed wire and whatever mechanisms there are in place to prevent people or dissuade people from coming into the country physically. The incentive structure for them to say has to be dismantled. And the number one thing I think that has always served as the greatest incentive, even before Joe Biden rolled out all of his freebies, or he gave away FEMA money and laundered every last cent that the American government had through USAID to Catholic charities, etc. The number one incentive that we've always given illegal immigrants is tolerating them staying. And removing that incentive will do the most for border security and trickle upward, right, to preserving our nation and making America first and great again. Essential. It's why this is a single topic on which there cannot be any compromise. And any Republican that compromises on it is a complete and utter failure. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. Be right back.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Every Republican that preaches amnesty doesn't get what illegal immigration is all about and how it was weaponized by the Democrats. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840 KXNT. I have long made the points that I mentioned earlier, and that is, obviously the getting in warm bodies and stacking blue districts, blue areas with those warm bodies has been beneficial to Democrats as soon as the Supreme Court ruled that illegal immigrants can be counted in the census. Okay? Plain and simple. They deserve representation. One of the worst decisions to come out of the Roberts Court. But the other component of this, and I've mentioned this many times, when people say to me, Sam, I don't get it. Why would these Democrats want to destroy their own cities? Why do they want to cause mayhem? Why do they want armed criminal gangs? Wait. Kamala Harris would call it what? Transnational gangs. Why would they want transnational gangs running through, not Denver, but Aurora, Colorado, for example. Denver too, right? I mean, everywhere, but I think it was Aurora that got in the news, and the denials from the media. Oh, nothing like that is happening in Aurora. Nothing to see here. Meanwhile, there are guys like roaming the streets with rifles and going to door in these apartment buildings, terrorizing people and whatever. Trump was the one who called this out. And of course, turned out he was right. Why would the Dems want this going on? Now, Stephen Miller, I've been holding on to this clip for a while, but now that we're talking about amnesty and these lobotomized Republicans pushing this, Stephen Miller went on Fox News. He was on, I think this was with, let's see here. Yeah, Mark Levin. He was on the Levin show on Fox, though, not on the radio show. Anyway, but he goes on and he says this about the grand plan with immigration and how it ties into the radical left-wing agenda. Listen to every word that Miller says here.
The left has been trying to shove Marxism, socialism, and communism down the throats of the American people for generations now. They ultimately were not able to do this during the Cold War because the middle class revolted against communism and Marxism and social engineering. The left shifted their tactics. The Democratic Party shifted their tactics to use migration as a weapon to break down the middle class and to gain political power and control in this country. They used migration to destroy our public education system, to destroy our healthcare system, to destroy wages and working conditions for the middle class of this country, and in effect, to destroy social and community cohesion. And then in that rubble, in that chaos, in that conflict, to then try to articulate the need for ever more government control, ever more government redistribution, ever more government power, and then to ultimately import voters to then support that agenda, to import voters who do not believe in limited government, who do not believe in the U.S. Constitution.
Right. First, they're warm bodies. Then, later, just like that one Republican congresswoman from Florida admits, somebody's going to legalize them. I mean, I'm not going to give them a pathway to citizenship, she says on Thursday. And then yesterday, Monday, she goes, well, somebody's going to give them a path. Eventually, they become voters. In fact, I am convinced, and one of the things that I hope investigations over the next couple of years will show is that the Biden administration actively gave people Social Security numbers. We know this, and that those Social Security numbers were used to vote. These people weren't even being productive citizens yet, as we always hear about illegals. They weren't being productive. They just got here. They were in the country a minute. They immediately got a 4-star hotel. They immediately got $30,000 in EBT cards, and they immediately got a Social Security number right before a major election. I wonder why. Like, what? I mean, but Sam, it wasn't proven yet. I know. I'm just a lawyer, and I'm connecting the dots. Sue me. Would this be enough? Circumstantial evidence, reasonable suspicion to open a criminal investigation? Absolutely. And frankly, I'd be surprised if that investigation was not well underway already. But I digress. The other part of this, and Miller says it, is that they want the mayhem, they want the chaos, because in that chaos, they're able to seize more power. People look at San Francisco as an example. Remember I mentioned to you all I went there September of, now I'm going to rack my brain. I think it was September of 23. I went, it was a year ago, September. I had to go to a consulate there in downtown San Francisco, in the financial district. So I get the kids, we fly up there, take a flight, land in San Francisco. We used to love it, right? We get there, and I mentioned my wife and I argue about this, by the way. She says it's every other store. I'm being charitable, and I say every third store. Doesn't matter. Whatever. It's dead. And the bustle and hustle and everything that I remember in the financial district, in and around, going from basically, let's say, the Westfield Mall all the way to the Embarcadero there, what used to be just, filled with people and business people leaving buildings, going to work, whatever, has been replaced by zombies. And I look at this and I go, what the hell? But the Democrats have succeeded in chasing independent wealth out, or in the process of it, right? Quite actively. And replacing that are a bunch of fentazombies who can be easily controlled and manipulated and can become a base of political support for the Democratic Party. These people would burn their own cities down for the sake of votes. And if you think that's hyperbole, well, let me tell you a story about August of 2020 and a man named George Floyd. Actually, I won't tell you that story because it's depressing as all hell. But these people love to burn. They love to burn. They love to break. They love to destroy and terrorize. They want the good and decent and the productive and the independent to cower and hide. And in their absence, they thrive. We've seen it happen, folks. It's not like this is some big conspiracy. It's happening right before our very eyes. Don't go anywhere. The What's Right show will be back in just a moment. Well, Robbie, I am seeing these emails too. I'll get to it in a moment. Sam Mirejovsky here, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, behind the What's Right microphone. Now, given the fact that I once was a happy, almost lifelong resident of California, got to California when I was very little. No, I wasn't. I was not an anchor baby. I want to make that clear. I grew up in California. I've witnessed with mine own eyes the absolute devastation wrought upon a great state by the Democratic Party. And I would describe it sort of like a slow-moving train wreck. No, I'm not describing a night out with Pete Buttigieg and his husband Chase. But no, it wasn't good. It's not good objectively. And now, I mentioned just before the break here how the chaos is by design. I played a clip from a week ago Monday on Life, Liberty, and Levin, where Stephen Miller, who is basically the de facto leader of the immigration policy in the administration, and a really bright guy, who's laying out the Democrats' grand plan when it comes to immigration. And I added to it that the chaos and the destruction and the death in some cases that is happening in these once great American cities, that it is by design. And I'm getting some pushback for this. I have to ask you, what do you think? What do you think a guy like Mamdani, who's running for mayor of New York City, what do you think he means by a platform that promises to end cash bail, that repeals all mandatory minimum sentences, that reduces maximum sentences with retroactive effect, meaning going back in time, who wants to repeal felony bump-up statutes, any sentencing enhancements, and cooperation with ICE? What do you think is the intended purpose behind an agenda with those items in it? I don't know. It sounds like somebody who wants more death and destruction out on the street. Pretty straightforward. if you were invading a country, I'm going to give this to you as a thought example. If you're invading a country, okay, and you're not there to seize control and order. You just want all hell to break loose. What do you think you do? I imagine one of the first things an invading force tries to do is break open the gates of whatever prison is in the capital, whatever insane asylum housing criminals, and throw the gates open and let the lunatics out. That's what you do. So why are we not paying attention when the new Democrats, the Democratic Socialists of America, who are quietly, maybe not so quietly, taking over the Democratic Party, what do we do when this is actually their platform? How are they any different than some barbaric invaders coming into our country of order, looking to stir things up? Miller gets into this a little bit in the second part of the interview with Mark Levin. I think it's quite good because when you look at the violent attacks on ICE, it's really domestic terrorism, right? It's intended to stop the enforcement of law. What are they fighting against? What is it actually consisting of?
And that is why you are seeing now this violent insurrectionist revolt by the Democrat Party against immigration and customs enforcement. You see video after video after video of Democrat shock troops in the streets hurling rocks at ICE officers and Border Patrol in their vehicles, firing projectiles at them, violently assaulting them, and yes, opening fire on them. Multiple assassination attempts against our brave and heroic ICE and Border Patrol agents, and barely a word of condemnation from the Democrat Party. In fact, the Democrat rhetoric calling our ICE officers, calling our Border Patrol Nazis and Gestapos and fascists, demanding as they do that ICE leave their communities, this nullificationist rhetoric, all of which inspires and incites these domestic terror attacks against law enforcement. So we really are at a hinge point here for the West.
When I talk about George Floyd being an important moment in our history, and I mockingly discuss the outsized influence that a crappy city like Minneapolis has had on the rest of the country, I think of, in particular, BLM. And I'm not talking of the Bureau of Land Management that is plaguing much of Nevada with its squatting on our land. I'm talking about, obviously, Black Lives Matter. And Black Lives Matter pushed something that I think was part of this conversation, very important part, and that's abolish the police. Everywhere where abolish the police, defund the police, whatever you want to call it, was advocated for in the wake of George Floyd's heroic demise. What happened? How many stories did we talk about here of nice liberal activist folks calling for the police in the midst of a home invasion robbery, say somewhere like Oakland? Hello, 911, what's your emergency? Hello, I have a man in my house. He's got a gun. Can you get here? 9 hours later, someone shows up. And the nice liberal left-wing woke woman has no idea why and is outraged. This is an actual story. And things like this happened at scale. Which, by the way, I think this is part of the Democrat success, is that Democratic voters rarely track causation. You ever found this out, Robbie? Like they don't understand that A begot B, right? There's a line, a causal line that goes straight to their, I voted to abolish the police, and then I voted to do away with cash bail. I voted against mandatory sentencing, meaning I voted for politicians that supported all these things. So less cops, more criminals out on the street, and One of them got into my house, and the police didn't show up for 9 hours. By the way, those of you not watching the Sam Cam, I am scratching my forehead. It's an exaggerated affectation. I'm not making fun of, yes, I'm making fun of this woman. Of course I'm making fun of this woman. I'll just come out and say it. What's the great expression of hoist by her own petard, right? She has created this situation with her voting. But they've not connected the dots, and I don't know that they will. And the Democrats are banking on this. So if we kind of take this all in, right? The new Democratic Socialists of America have purged the old school common sense Democrats out of the party, are quietly, maybe not so quietly, taking control of the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, right, the media is still retarded and calling Trump a Nazi, which is kind of missing the point because Trump has now occupied what used to be the center. How do I know that? I don't know, because RFK Jr., last name Kennedy, anybody, is in the administration. Tulsi Gabbard is in the administration. Michael Schellenberger, who was once considered a liberal writer, right, Robbie? I mean, we followed Schellenberger for years, was a liberal. He's left the left. It's, yeah, it's Barry Weiss. All of these are for, and you know, some Republicans, well, these aren't real Republicans. It doesn't matter what their purity is. The point is that they have either left or been ousted or both from the Democratic Party. And that doesn't say as much about us as it says about, or about them even, as it says about where the Democratic Party is going. And in the midst of all of this, in its race toward fervent communist ideological purity, the new Democrats are doubling down and expanding on the very policies that destructed America to begin with. And I posed this question earlier on in the program, and this is why, by the way, you always should listen to the end, is because usually I find what I'm trying to get at, it takes me 2 hours. The reason they're doubling down is because they measure success differently than you and I. If I were elected into government, I would measure my success as a politician based on, standard of living, public safety, schools, etc., measurable, definable characteristics that improve the lives of every single one of my subjects. Okay, right? That's what would matter to me. But that doesn't matter to the left. They care about political power. The reason that the new left is doubling down on these tactics is because these tactics are effective on seizing power. The Democrats have lost in the polls. The Democrats are in a winter of retreat politically. So what's the solution? Playing dirty. That's the solution, quite honestly. Revolutionary tactics. You think that the Bolsheviks came to power in the Soviet Union having a fair election? You think that all of these Democrats, new Democratic Socialists, went to school to learn about the principal bedrocks of a representational democracy? These a-holes were all studying Marx. They were studying Mao. They're studying every commie pinko on the planet, every revolutionary scumbag that ever lived, and they're idolizing them. And they're salivating over the idea of taking over the United States of America using the same tactics. Wake up. Everything I am saying here is gospel truth. Sam Mirejovsky, News Talk 840, KXNT, back in a jiff. Hi, welcome back. Sam Mirejovsky here, News Talk 840, KXNT. The Japanese First Party had a big victory yesterday in Japan. They're described as fringe and far right, which, of course, if Reuters is calling somebody fringe and far right, well, it must be pretty common sense. The Sanseito Party, biggest winners in Japan's upper house election on Sunday, gained support with warnings of a silent invasion of immigrants. Now, the Japanese, got to admire them. They're one of the most xenophobic, nationalistic countries out there. They are very protective of their national identity and wary of foreigners. They are probably the first to ring a warning bell when there is an invasion afoot. But what's funny to me is in the midst of this entire conversation about immigration enforcement, that even Mexico, that's right, Mexico, is mad about tourists coming to Mexico City. This happened earlier in the month, but I want to come back to it because I'm always curious why we as Western, largely white societies are not allowed to have our own distinct cultural identity. The New York Times did a piece on this on the 5th of July, earlier this month. The tourist influx in Mexico City is making prices soar and hundreds of people are protesting. Your new home is an invasion, signs read. We shouldn't feel like foreigners in our own land. Pay taxes, learn Spanish, respect my culture. Wow. They sure don't like it when the foot is on the other, when the shoe's on the other foot. I wonder how, when the Mexican government, via their consulates around the U.S., places like Los Angeles and Minneapolis and other cities with, larger pockets of, San Francisco as well, of Mexican citizens living likely illegally, are constantly talking about how the U.S. ought to treat their citizens with dignity. I wonder how that fits into this conversation. So I've been to Mexico City, by the way, many times. I've said this, I could live there. I recognize, I think there's a fair amount of, I could live there. Yeah, I mean, there's great food. It's very Western, I think. I get pockets of it are safe. Cleaner, certainly, than some American cities. I would feel, for example, more safe in the nice parts of Mexico City than I would in the nice parts of Chicago. So, so I mean, that's what it is. But again, I mean, I understand that a lot of Americans have actually moved there. The cost of living, housing's pretty expensive, but cost of living generally a little bit less. So if people are working remotely, they're able to make that happen. They leave the country just long enough to, get an exit stamp on their passport, come back, a month later or whatever it is. So, this stuff happens. I'm aware of it. But it's just interesting, and it's a note that certain countries are able to fight against foreigners, even Americans, in their midst. But we are not allowed to make that argument in turn. And it's the New York Times writing the piece. That's the best part about it. The New York Times, who routinely rails against Trump and enforcing America First type immigration reforms, is the very newspaper here talking about the negative effects that, visitors and longtime, sort of not permanent residents, staying in Mexico City are causing the city of, the Mexicans. Fascinating stuff. So, it's just, look, I'm just pointing this out. Now, finally, and I don't, there hasn't so far. I understand. I'm getting a lot of emails. I just want to respond to this real fast. I spoke to Alan about it this morning on Vegas at 8, as I do every Tuesday, a check-in with Alan on News Talk here. And one of the things we talked about is all these prosecutions. I still stand by what I said as far as prosecutions taking time to develop. I have my concerns that Pam Bondi is more of a face and less of a serious prosecutor. One thing we have to remember, that the Attorney General, whoever it is, whether it's the biggest, bestest lawyer or not, is not the person who is prosecuting these cases. It all comes down to the staff. And I'll tell you this, one of the challenges that you have if you're Pam Bondi, Matt Gaetz, or whoever would have come into the administration, day one as Attorney General, is cleaning out the hornet's nest and dumping all of the bad people that are in there who are acting as a fifth column, as an obstructionist force within the department. It's hard to file cases against Democrats when their allies are working on the cases. These people are leaking. They're giving information. They're giving information to the targets of investigations to burn documents, to lose important things, to lawyer up before, well in advance, to be ready for, a potentially, a case being filed against them. This kind of stuff needs to be cleaned out first. So I'm not here defending Pam Bondi. I'm just saying that I don't envy her. I don't envy anybody right now who's coming into the Department of Justice, or frankly, any other agency, but particularly the DOJ, because you've got to clean up the whole FBI. You got to clean up all the prosecutors there that are all the libs in DC. You got to dump them. And then you've got to quickly hire new people, and you've got to vet them. It's very difficult. It's not as easy as, I can't believe Pam Bondi isn't pushing the button. She better push that button and do it. Okay. But somebody's got to do the work. And those people have to be trusted. And that's not the easiest thing. That's my only point. Sam@whatsrightshow.com. Email me what you think. @whatsrightsam on X, formerly known as Twitter. I'll be back again tomorrow to do this all over again. And remember, if you've been in an accident, been in a crash, there's only one law firm to trust. Sam & Ash. Injury Law. Because you deserve